Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Freedom Life Center. So glad that you're here today. If you're watching online, I wish you were here, but glad you tuned in that way today. Listen, I don't know if we have any announcements this morning. Do we have any announcements?
I don't think we do.
No announcements.
Just a quick announcement for those of us who are going to the lunch afterwards. Just make sure you scoot on out of here because we can chit chat over there.
Right.
Lunch starts at 11:45.
So we're getting ready here to show a video or a slideshow that kind of Michelle put together over the past 10 years. But before we do that, I just want to say a few words. One is I wish I could acknowledge everybody, right, that's helped over the years and done so much. And seeing everybody up here in the band, that was incredible. Thank you all who participated, who came back and joined us. But I just have to say, Michelle just kind of brushed over real quick that for a year we showed videos. And that never, you'd think that would go smooth. That was never real smooth. And there's a person who helped me do, listen, we were everything. Everybody you saw up here, that was done by two guys, me and Brian Peters. Isn't that right, Brian? I mean it. If it wasn't for Brian, I don't know what we would have done for that first year. And we had our challenges and everything, and we bought sound equipment that neither of us knew anything about. We bought computers that we didn't know how to run, and but we made it through a whole year, didn't we, Brian? And I appreciate that. I appreciate your time with us, and it was great. Also, too, this morning Daryl Nath called me. He sends his love to everybody here. Wish he could be here. They have a dedication for one of their grandbabies today. And so that has been on the books for a while. And you know how churches are. They tend to stick to their schedules. And so he couldn't come, but he sends his love. And Daryl was and still really is a big part of Freedom Life Center. Really was there for me all those beginning years and, through all the different things that we went through, all the trials and tribulations, but all the good times as well. And as you're going to see in the video, there's a lot of times when you'll see Daryl and I standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, much like Brian and I. Yeah.
I'm going to make an acknowledgement real quick too, if that's okay. I saw, and I meant to have you come up, Stacy, to join us for that last song, but Stacy was part of our band from day one as well, and she also went to Scotland with me on a missions trip. So Stacy, it is a joy to have you and Johnny here today and to celebrate with us and all that they did. They worked with youth. They did a lot of stuff too. So, and I'm sorry, I know there'd be so many people we can recognize, but I wanted to.
And there are a few who have been there. Like, she's not even here this morning, but there from the time we met at the farmhouse, and that was Sherry Norton. Sherry and Bud were there from not even day one of here, but day one at the farmhouse. And Sherry ran our kitchen for all those years, and now she's running a horse farm. But she comes back periodically,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I'm going to step off. Why don't you go ahead and set up the video a little bit if you want to say anything, and you can go ahead and get started, okay?
Okay. There's nothing to set up. This is a video I spent 6 hours going through all of our pictures, trying to put this together, and I just have to get a shout out to my son, Brent. There was one picture I was looking for. The one picture I wanted in this video was the picture of our very first Sunday. We had, I think, 8 pink plastic chairs set up in this room, and that was it. And then a couple round tables, I think, in the back. I spent hours looking for this picture. Brent comes in yesterday. He says, Mom, I know where it is. I said, Brent, I have looked through everything. I've looked on Dropbox. I've looked at the computer here, everything. He said, I'll get it for you. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. He found that picture. You will see it at the beginning of the video. So thank you to Brent for putting the music and everything to it. So here we go.
This is the kingdom. This is the kingdom. Everybody's building empires, building walls high in the name of glory. Everybody's hanging high wires. It's a fine line. It's an age-old story. The first will be last, and the last will be hardest hard time. This is the kingdom, heaven coming down to the corners of the earth. This is the kingdom, come on, live it us, gonna load up this whole world. This is for freedom, freedom, to break off every chain. This is the kingdom. Blessed are the bound and broken. You're a citizen, and your faith will prove it. Blessed are the persecuted and the wounded. You'll be crowned as rulers. The first will be last, and the last will be kings. And the small will be great, and the great will be weak. This is the kingdom, heaven coming down to the corners of the earth. This is the kingdom, come on up in us, gonna load up this whole world. This is for freedom,
Wow, wasn't that awesome? You guys want to open up the windows on the side there? Get some light in here? We can turn those lights off coming down at me. It's been an amazing 10 years. You know, if you've been here at all and you look through those pictures, all the different memories, I noticed different people I could hear different voices when they saw certain things, like the turkey drop, how exciting that was, and Rock the Block, all the people that were involved in Rock the Block. It's been an amazing run. We're done. We're out of here now. Just kidding. Anything you want to say about that? Or I said, you want to set it up? You said, I have nothing to say, and then you talked for like 3 minutes.
I'm done. No, we need to give you time. You're out of time, so.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and pray then?
All right. God, thank you for this day. Thank you for everyone who came through those doors. Thank you that we can be here together today as family. And I just pray for Jeff, God, that you would once again, like you've done every year before, lead him, guide him. The words you've placed on his heart to say, he will say, and for all of us to listen, to hear, and receive from you this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen.
If there's kids in here 1st through 5th grade or even younger, you can come on downstairs now.
Great. Well, in kind of preparing for today, I didn't really know, kind of which way to go, what to say. So I was thinking about, so many people have heard, how we started, the how. We started in the farmhouse, and we were there for almost a year, and then we came here, and how we started. You heard a little bit about that, about how we did with music, with the videos, and kind of stumbling along. But Brian, those stumblings were some of the best. They really were. So here's what I'd like to tell you today. I'd like to tell you, this has no bearing on anybody really but me, in the sense that it's my story. Yesterday we had a men's breakfast, and Pete asked Tony Mancini to share, and it was awesome. And his story, how he in his life, his journey and where he came from, and how he started to attend Freedom Life Center, and then he was gone for a while and came back, and all that was great. But at the end, Pete asked him a question, and I want to bring it to us today because it's so pertinent to my story as well. Pete asked him, he said, I'm not exactly sure how he asked it, to be honest with you, but he said something like, how do you think of God now? Or who is God to you now? A question like that. I've never heard that question before. You probably had that question, right? And my guess is, and I've probably been asked that before, and especially when you're in a church setting, right? And so when someone asks that question, at least in my past, I tend to give a very churchy answer. Anybody like that, right? Start talking about the qualities of God, the nature of God, his character, and so forth, and all that sort of stuff, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I heard Tony give his answer, and I thought, that is the best explanation I have ever heard in my life. And I began to think about that. I began to think about my story, when we came back from Africa over 10 years ago. Tony said this. He said, I don't know. I really don't know much about God. Something like that, right? I don't really know. And I thought to myself, how brilliant is that? And he didn't mean it to be brilliant, right? But how brilliant is that? Because what we begin to try to do is explain the unexplainable, don't we? We begin to quantify and qualify God. And Tony didn't even attempt to do that. Now, from maybe the untrained eye, if someone was there and you were a churchy person, you might think, well, and I even told this to Tony afterwards. I said, well, eventually he'll be able to answer that question, right? Eventually he'll be able to give that sort of churchy answer. And I told him, I said, Tony, I hope that 10 years from now, you don't think you have a better answer than what you gave today. And here's what he said. He began to talk about his life. And he began to say, one time I was up here speaking, and I said, if you're if you're I don't forget what I said, you're an engineer, do engineering. If you're something, if you're a drummer, drum. If you're a singer, sing. And Tony said, I felt like you were talking right to me. I was like, how does he know? Of course I wasn't. I was just fishing for any drummers, because we always need drummers. If I'm honest. But the point is this, he said, and he said this, he said, I don't know, was that God speaking to me, or is it something else, something bigger, something, the cosmos or whatever, right? And exactly, because you can't define him, can you? You can't define him. And it's every week I get up here and I try to talk about God, and I find myself over and over again, less and less talking about God and trying to make sense of him or prove him, and talking about us and our life and the way he cares for us and the way he loves us and the way he desires us to live. So here's the thing. I'm gonna use Rocco here in a minute. Rocco. So I'm gonna. How many like magic? Anybody like magic? Anybody like? Just a couple people. Those of you who don't, just bear with me then. And so I have 2 coins here, Rocco. See, one is this Mexican coin right there, and one's a $50. And what I'm going to have you do is, I'm going to have you take these 2 coins and just hold them in your hand like this, close them up like that, okay? Now, Rocco has 2 coins in his hands. Rocco, without looking, just take 1 coin out and put it in the other hand, just one, so you have 1 in each hand without looking. So you have 2 coins, right? And so you can sense that one's bigger than the other, because the Mexican $50, the Mexican coin is smaller than the other one. Is that right? You can tell the difference? So the bigger one's the American $50. Would you hand me that one, the bigger one? So he handed me the American $50 right there. You want to look at that just to see that's the American $50, right? That's the American half. And so that copper coin, so what I just demonstrated in magic, you have 3 parts to magic, right? And so this first part is just like the presentation, right? And then you have what's called the pledge. And then you have what's called the turn. So you're about to see the turn take place. So Rocco, stand up for a minute and hold that coin tight in your hand. What I want you to do is just hold it tight there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try, no, hold it tight. I'm going to try to take that coin out of your hand, right? Do you still have it? Hold on, let me see if I can get it there. I'm going to try to take that copper coin. I think I have the copper coin now. Do you think you still have it? You do. Why don't you open up your hand and show everybody the copper coin? It's actually a quarter. So that's called the turn. The turn is the disappearance of the object, right? And then the third part, actually the most spectacular part of a magic trick isn't the turn. It's what they call the prestige. The prestige is the reappearing of the copper coin. Watch, I'll show you. Watch. There it is right there, Rocco. There's the copper coin. So now, the question is, what does that have to do with anything, right? So I just want to talk about, I have about 15 minutes. I can't possibly tell you the birth of Freedom Life Center in my heart in 15 minutes. I can't possibly do that. But I just want to just give you a few ideas, a few thoughts that I have discovered over the past 10 years in explaining the beginnings of Freedom Life Center in my heart. Are you with me? What I mean is, I didn't know this then. I didn't know it then. But after 10 years of living life and learning and growing, I've come to understand this process taking place in my life. And it all kind of came together yesterday when Tony was sharing about his kind of not comprehending and not being able to put his finger on things. And I go back 10 years to where I was, and it's kind of the same kind of feeling that I had, right? And here, so if I could take this, everything I'm going to say today in one sentence, it would be this that I've learned, is that Christianity isn't about understanding something, number one. It's not about understanding something. but undergoing a transformation in how we live. Just in one sentence. Because before that, it was always about an understanding. It was always about a set of doctrine. It was always about belief. That if somehow, some way, I could just believe the right things. And so we go in search of, and listen, we all still do it, don't we? We go in search of belief and believing the right things. And really what we're looking for, we all really have, and this is my experience that I've found, we all really have belief. What we're looking for is for someone to validate that belief. In this book that I was reading, it's talking about, it's kind of a funny way of putting it, but talking about this company that wanted to sell more milkshakes. And they asked themselves this question, or these people that came along and helped them ask themselves this question: why do people hire a milkshake? In other words, I know you buy a milkshake. Why do you hire somebody or something to do something for you? Isn't that right? You hire. So why do you hire a milkshake? So they went through this whole thing of why people hire a milkshake, and they discovered that people in the morning buy it, and later on, 2 different reasons. Well, how do they get that to sell more milkshakes, right? Well, I began thinking about that question. Why do people hire the church? Why do they hire the church? And one of the things that I was thinking of is, what I just said is, a lot of times we hire the church to validate our beliefs. And that's why you find people going around from churches to churches and so forth, and trying to find a place that validates the majority of their beliefs. Because no place is going to validate every one of your beliefs. Isn't that true? You're always going to, I meet people all the time and say, oh, I go to this church, and yeah, I don't agree with, and right away that's what they tell me. The part that they don't agree with. I go to this church, but I don't really agree with this. Or I go to this church, but this church I don't really agree with that, right? And so we go to church oftentimes to get our beliefs validated. Now, I have a very good friend, my friend Jeff. You all know Jeff down in Florida. He told me one time, a long time ago, and I just sent him a text recently about this. He said to me, Jeff, he said, you're a really good communicator. People enjoy listening to you, and you can captivate, this is my friend, captivate people's attention. So he said, but if you want to build a big church, he said, what you want to do is, and he began to tell me, you need to tell people what they need to do and how they need to live. That's what they want to know. That's what they want to know. They want to know, don't do these things and do these things, and then promise them something good from it. In other words, he said, promise them heaven. Tell them, if you behave this way, you're going to go to heaven. If you behave this way, well, then you're not going to go to heaven. If you want to build a big church, he said, do that. He said, but however, he said, if you just be honest with yourself and you just share the message that you share about God's love and about how we are to be fully human in this world, he said, you won't necessarily grow a big church, but you'll help people transform their life. And I didn't make a conscious decision about that. I didn't say, but I went to another conference one time. I won't name who the speaker was or anything, but I was talking to him privately in a small group. And he said to me, I kind of described this dilemma. And he said, Jeff, here's the thing you need to do. You need to be true to yourself. True to yourself. And kind of let the chips fall where they may. Right? So I have 10 minutes here. Let me just kind of draw out some things to you that I've learned over the years. So this idea of church being this thing to validate me, or having an idea of what I think I want, right? Let me tell you a parable. This is this type of a refusal to see what's right before you in pursuit of something else. It's a parable of a rich businessman who's returning to work after lunch. He saw a fisherman get up from the side of the river with a bucket of fish. Where are you going? Asked the businessman. To the market to sell these fish, replied the fisherman. How long did it take you to catch those fish? Oh, a couple hours. Well, what are you going to do the rest of the day? He said, well, I don't know, said the fisherman. I guess I'll just go to the beach with my family, drink wine, and chat to passersby. But if you keep fishing, you can catch enough fish to earn more money, said the businessman. And why would I do that? Well, you could buy better equipment, catch more fish. Within a few years, you'll have enough that you can buy a fleet of boats, larger nets, and eventually you might be able to move to a big city. And then what? Well, then you could retire and you could sit on the beach with your family and drink wine and chat to passersby. So what we're confronted with in this parable is that the businessman fails to see the failure in his own path to the ideal. And so for me, in my life as a follower of Jesus, I began to pursue the things that I thought would give me what I was looking for. And what I was looking for were things like, acceptance, like we all are, and wholeness and so forth. And then I began to look at some different things in the Bible. Now this is me, okay? I began to look at the situation in the garden, right? You have the garden's open for Adam and Eve to go anywhere they want, and then you have the forbidden fruit, right, that they're not to partake of. And you have a prohibition. The prohibition in that is God's voice, right? Don't eat of this. And I've been talking a lot about prohibition lately. My son goes to Chatham University, and talking about prohibitions and how prohibitions tend to make us want something all the more, a prohibition, doesn't it? I mean, Paul kind of says that, does he not? He said when the law was given, that's prohibition, when the law was given, sin increased. And so Paul wisely says something like, that's why he says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. And I think that's so wise, because the prohibition, the don't, just makes you go want to have it all the more. And so Paul just takes it away from that and says it's all beneficial. It's all beneficial. I mean, it's all permissible, but it's not all beneficial. He puts it in a realm of, now for me, why would I want to choose something to do myself that's not beneficial for me? Right? Puts it in a different way, a wisdom way of thinking about life. And now you have, let's move on to the Old Testament, to the temple, right? You have the temple, and you have the court of the Gentiles, which is the outside, and then you have this veil. The veil is a form of what? A prohibition. A prohibition to what? To this place, this Holy of Holies where God dwelt. And unfortunately, the majority of my life, even though I know the Bible and I know the New Testament and so forth, I lived as if the temple model, the temple was reality in non-reality, if that makes sense. If that's the way that the cosmos works, was the temple model. That God is somewhere else. And we talk about it so much in church, that God's somewhere, we talk like that. Like we watch football games and people point up like that God's somewhere else. And it just permeates so much of our life that even if intellectually we can identify that, yeah, he's not that, right? He's within us, we still live as though he's not. Right? Don't we? And we live as though he's not. Every time we curse somebody for their behavior, we live as though he's not in us, that he's somewhere else. And then we have not just that, then we have the crucifixion. Crucifixion is a loss, isn't it? It's a death. So in terms of a magic trick, you have the pledge, which is Jesus. Jesus comes. Then you have the turn. The turn is the death, the disappearance. Then you have the prestige. You have the return of Christ. But the thing about a magic trick is this. So Rocco, you have that coin. So I'll let you on a little secret. So the trick is this. The first Mexican coin I showed you wasn't the coin that you see before you right now. The first one I showed you is embedded in the $50. So it fits inside the $50. So in the turn, right, it's an illusion that it disappeared, right? It's an illusion that this disappeared. This was always in place. This is important. This was always in existence. And so the disappearance is this illusion. Because when the veil was rent in two, right, and they went inside there, lo and behold, what was in the temple behind the veil? Nothing. Now, the part that's important to know is this, is that nothing was ever in there. Nothing was ever behind the veil. That's the illusion. And friends, that's the illusion, unfortunately, that we today still live with. This illusion that there is something out there somewhere else, that if we could get to that, that's what's going to make me whole. It's going to make me complete. It's going to make my life what I desire it to be. Now, bring in the why. So I was a missionary. We were living in Africa, and Michelle was pregnant. You all know the story. We came back, and we lost the baby right before childbirth. Now, what I was searching for, what I was constantly looking for and desiring was what was behind the veil. If somehow I could just reach that. And so I tried to reach that in so many different ways. And I thought, listen, if you are if you go to church, that's great. If you're a Sunday school teacher or a children's church teacher, that's awesome. If you do youth, that's even better, right? If you're a elder in a church, wow, great. If you're a pastor, fantastic. But if you could be a missionary, wow, that's it. Like, that's the top. Right? Talk about climbing a ladder, right? In business. What's the top, the CEO? What's the highest I can go? Well, that's missionary. Surely if I can attain that, if I could do that, then, right? Then I'll have achieved. I'll have made it. I'll have that attaboy that I desire from God, and God's going to take care of all that. And what I discovered in the loss of the child was this turn, was the disappearance of God, in a sense, right? The crucifixion, the experience. Now I'm talking in metaphor, right? I'm not talking about the actual things that took place. I'm talking about metaphor and in my life and how that disappeared. And I had a choice. What do I do now? Do I say it's non-existent? Do I say that it's meaningless? There's nothing to it, or is there yet the prestige? The prestige. The return of the coin. See, it is the return of the coin, but it's not a return of the coin in the same way. Rabbis used to talk about this idea of the veil rending in two and it being empty in the Holy of Holies. This idea that they said, well, God is actually now not confined to a space. Was he ever confined to a space? Friends, he was never confined to a space. That's why when I heard Tony's description or lack of description, I thought, that's it. That is it. Is that this idea that God is in everything. Not in a way that we worship trees. You hear what I'm saying? Right? But God is spirit, and God is everywhere. He permeates everything. Let me go back and read you that one sentence that I said. That's this: Christianity is not about understanding something. It had always been about understanding to me. When Tony gave his answer, it actually was a lack of understanding. A lack of understanding. Because Christianity, first and foremost, is not about understanding something. And so then I said, you know what? If I'm going to stay in this life of spirituality or of religion or whatever, I don't know how I even thought about it back then, to be honest with you. But if I'm going to stay in this, then I'm going to do it in a way that is, at least in my perception at that time, is coming into my understanding of what this is all about. And I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to do it in a way where this place isn't about the elite who follow Christ and do everything right. This is going to be a place where people come and explore. People come and have questions. People like Tony who wonder and go, and are in it for a while and go, I still don't comprehend God. I go, well, good. Good. Because the minute you comprehend him and the minute you define him, I can assure you of one thing. That, my friend, is not God. Is not God. So experiencing him, and that's what Tony began to talk about, the experience of life and experiencing him in the profane. You know what I mean by profane? Profane, I'm not talking about profanity in that sense. Profane is the things that we consider to be tangible reality, everyday normal. Profane. The prestige in the return is to experience God in the profane, in the everyday. And Tony, that's what you gave me. That's what you gave us yesterday. He didn't know it that way. He didn't explain it that way. He didn't have to explain it that way. I don't know if anybody else even heard it that way. But I got it. And he said, and let me just tell you this. I hope I don't want to share too much, but he said, listen, our life as a family is different because of that. Not because of messages and not because of music and not because he's playing the drums now, not because that. Our life is different. We begin to see life. We begin to respect all of life. My words, not his. We begin to respect all of life as, can I say, sacred, right? And when we begin to live our lives that way, we have other friends that think of the same way, right? About love, about expressing love, and going places and doing things sheerly out of love. Let me tell you something about love. I wrote a couple things down here, and I'm gonna close, okay? To love is to experience the world come alive. It just is. I'm just not here to tell you. To truly love is to experience the world come alive, but it also means opening yourselves up to suffering. It just does. When we open ourselves up to love, we don't leave behind pain. And this is what I learned through when I came home from Africa and we experienced this pain. And I wondered where God was in the pain because I thought that he was still behind some veil and he was there and he acted on my behalf. And he acted, you understand what I'm saying? He acted from outside of me on my circumstances. That's what God did. And I realized, rather, I need to open myself up to the experience of death and pain because love involves both pain and pleasure. But it's then when life gets infused with depth and wonder. And I think that's part of the point. I think that's part of Jesus showing us how to live, about Jesus saying, follow me. And I don't know about you, but that's what I desire. I desire my life to have depth. I'm going to keep talking, but I don't know the band come up. If somebody can go down and get Michelle, because they're going to sing one last song. Because when life is infused with both depth and wonder, we can't help but experience our fair share of both happiness and unhappiness. Let me tell you this. I'll close with this. It's only when we try to protect ourselves from love, it's only to protect ourselves from love that we can protect ourselves from suffering by creating a closed circle around ourselves where we only care for our own well-being. And that's really goes back, that's really what I was doing. I was just caring for my own well-being as a missionary, as trying to be a follower of Christ in that sense. I was just really caring for my own well-being, right? I was a missionary, let's be honest with you, okay? I was a missionary not so I could help other people go to heaven, so I could make sure that I would go there. Because frankly, if I'm honest, the majority of people in the world, I really don't care if they're there or not. I'm just being honest. I don't care what, you may think differently. That's great. And if I'm there, right? I'm talking about me before. If I'm there, my wife's there, my family's there, right? Right? Yeah, some friends. Yeah, I want some close friends there. Maybe even some of you. Maybe, I don't know. I want some of you to be there, right? But in experiencing this loss of that, I gained something the same but different. And it helps me to live in this world in the way that I think that was presented to all of us in the life of Jesus, to make a difference. So over the past 10 years, I've sought to make a difference in your life. I'm not saying I always succeeded. You know what I mean? A lot of people have left. You know what I mean? I failed. But I keep thinking about the crucifixion, the failure of the crucifixion. What I mean by that is him dying, right? That loss, but the success within failure. Friends, I want to keep thinking that in my own life, the success within my failure. And so if God gives me the privilege of living another 10 years, I want to lead Freedom Life Center for another 10 years of helping us learn how to be better human beings, to love each other, to love our community, to love this world, and to see God, not somewhere out there, but to see him in the profane, in the everyday, in your life and in my life. And so, Freedom Life Center exists for now. I just pray that, by God's grace, that we continue to function and to do good in our world. Amen. Michelle's going to come up. We're going to